Welcome to Software Sales Simplified, Move to Success, your weekly stop for the latest and greatest on all of the insights, trends, and learnings that you need in order to be a better seller. Whether you are just starting out or you're an old hand at selling, come and join us every week here where we share our thoughts and the thoughts of our guests. Matt Long and I are going to be your co-hosts today. And between the two of us, we have over 50 years worth of experience selling software, running software teams in the space of enterprise software sales. Before we get started too deeply, please remember to like, follow, subscribe, and leave comments on whatever channel and platform it is that you're listening to our episode. Really helps the show out. My name is Kevin Donville, and I'm going to be one of your hosts today. And the other host is going to be my partner in crime and all-around best friend, Matt Long. Matt, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Happy to be here for another week and another podcast.
Another week, another podcast. We had a bit of an unusual one last week. We went and announced our education series. If you haven't had a chance to check that one out, check out that episode, as well as the education video that we produced, which is the first in our new series, which is all about what is a sales engineer. We're getting a lot of great feedback, but we'd like to know your thoughts as well.
That's on YouTube, by the way.
We'll put those links right down in the description. So if you don't know where to find it, if you don't know where our YouTube channel is, just go ahead and take a look at the description. There'll be a link to take you right there. But today we have a guest with us, a gentleman who Matt and I have both worked with in the past. In fact, I think we have crossed paths more than once over the course of our professional careers. And that is Tamer Osman. So, sir, how are you? Good to see you here. Welcome
Yeah,
to the
great.
show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been too long. Miss working with you guys. Love what you guys are doing, and happy to be a part of a little piece of it today and join you guys.
Little piece that we hope turns into a big piece. I have always been fascinated working with you. We've had a couple of really creative, interesting, and thought-provoking meetings with partners, customers, developers, technology partners, and business partners over the years. And it's always been a real thrill for me to go into those meetings with you because I know that they're going to be high value and they're going to be a lot of fun. And that's the space that you come from. You come to us with the perspective of partnerships and what partnerships mean to the software industry. So I know you, Matt knows you, but our guests do not. Please take a moment, take the floor, and introduce yourself to everybody here and tell them a little bit about what you do and who you do it with.
You know, you were talking about your combined 50 years of experience. I'm right about that point, about 25 years in my career. Launched it back in the dot-com boom back in San Francisco, south of Market, which is kind of where it was all happening there. And I was fortunate to play a fairly pivotal role in the launch of KPMG, Big Five firm back in the day, and their e-business division. I had come in through an acquisition of a web development studio that they made. And it was a pretty exciting run. Dot-com boom went to bust, and I had to kind of look around for my next gig. And I ended up getting into my first partnership role, and it was managing the West for the Cisco Systems strategic partnership. Cisco at the time was essentially the NVIDIA of the era and in the dot-com area. And so I was fortunate enough to get into that role. Started understanding the value of partnerships, strategic partnerships, the impact they make.
Mm-hmm.
Went on to managing strategic alliances with Siebel Systems, Sun. Two companies are now part of Oracle. CA left, went to work for another GSI, was able to manage the Microsoft partnership there for a bit, and really, all in all, got to touch over $1 billion in business that these partners were influencing and impacting. And be able to work with some of these really iconic CEOs early in my career. That sparked an idea for me to launch my first startup, and a company called RGlobe that I started from this concept of collaborative selling. And what I found in all these strategic partnerships is you're mapping all these accounts to try to get sales teams to work together so you could jointly prospect and win more business. Well, it was a very tedious exercise. And so I was like, just like these dating sites out there, there's got to be a way to automate this process a bit. And so I took this crazy journey of building this cross-company collaborative selling platform. And so I did that for several years, built the software, ran the company. Unfortunately, we're a bit ahead of our time. So, ended up sort of sunsetting, sold parts of that company. And right about that time, Ira Pollack, who we all know very well, running sales for Tea Leaf. And he knew me back from the KPMG days, reached out and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You know a thing or two about partnerships. Come over here and run our partner program." And so I was fortunate enough to to come join Tea Leaf when you guys were there. Had another opportunity at the same time, but there's no question that that was the right one. And you guys know, sort of from there, being acquired by IBM, I went on to work for a company called Demandware, leader in the e-commerce space, Salesforce, AWS, and then back at IBM. So I'm back at IBM now and running a part of our business around building ecosystems around our hyperscaler partnerships. So AWS and Microsoft, and the types of partners that are working with both of those companies as well as ours. And how do we drive more software sales through these business partners is really my focus today. It's safe to say I've touched a few different types of partnerships, understand the model of and the models very well, whether you're on the services side or the software side or hyperscaler side, what's relevant and whether you're reselling or you're managed service provider, or you're embedding your technology into another technology for some purpose, whether you're a startup or whether you're an enterprise or a medium-sized company. I've seen a bit of it all and seen what kind of works and what doesn't for both the companies and for the people involved, specifically sellers, right? And how do they actually sell more in their roles and achieve or exceed their quotas?
You mentioned hyperscaler a couple times. Can you just talk about what that means?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I didn't really even hear the word hyperscaler until I joined, or at least was considering rejoining IBM. Hyperscalers are essentially the three very fast growing public cloud providers. So AWS being number one, Azure number two, and Google or GCP being number three. And these are the companies for the most part are referred to as hyperscalers. I believe for the most part, based on just the hyper growth that they not only have shown themselves, but for companies that decide to leverage their infrastructure and their services to rapidly grow as well.
So you're touching on something that I think is one of the things I'm hoping that the audience walks away with today. There's a lot of folks in the software industry who've been selling for years who don't really completely understand nor appreciate exactly everything the partners group can be bringing to the table. And as you just said, there's multiple different kinds of roles that partners can have, and there's different types of activities and supports they can provide. But I've always looked at the partner group, when run properly, as a major innovation arm to sales and being able to be something that really moves the game along. As you just said a moment ago, helping sell things faster. In your past history, and you've had some amazing opportunities and you've been exposed to some amazing teams in the past, what are some of the standout innovations or disruptions that you've seen in the industry in the past? How and what have they been, and how have they defined that career that you've had?
Yeah, at least on the things or innovations or events that have defined my career, there are some that definitely stand out, some of which have nothing to do with partnerships at all, and are moments where I'm like, wow, that definitely led to a big step forward in my career. There are a couple where you're like, ooh, that kind of led to maybe a step back. Some lessons learned there. I think we've all experienced. I think in my experience working with the Cisco partnership, and I touched on co-selling and mapping these accounts. And I was probably the youngest person in that role I was fortunate to be in. And within the first year, I was able to exceed 175% of my quota through an approach that I took to collaborative selling and mapping, um, sellers across a large set of accounts. In this case, the partnership had built out these joint solutions and offerings that benefited both KPMG and Cisco,
Mhm.
and so it was up to us in the field to capitalize on that strategic partnership. And so through the methodology that I took to mapping sellers around mutual accounts and opportunities, I was able to exceed my target and help a lot of sellers do so themselves. I also touched on the startup that I launched. That was based on me understanding that there's so much value if you can get the right people around a set of target accounts focused on driving mutually beneficial outcomes for the customers and for themselves as sellers. The opportunity could be tremendous. Just so happened that I was doing it very manually. I'd literally spend like nights, I'm like watching a TV show or Sports Center, and I'm mapping these accounts in preparation for the next day or for, you know, some strategic planning that we're doing in a specific region or industry with sellers. So this concept I had was around, if we could automate that, take the tediousness out of that process, and then figure out how you could rapidly build trust between sellers too. It's important that the sellers understand what the value proposition, what's the win-win for both companies, but then you need to be able to trust this person. Like, they're not going to screw me in this account, right? Like, they're actually going to help me achieve my objectives and understand that I'm trying to do the same, but we all have our respective goals. So how do you do that? And a lot of that comes down to trust and trusting the person that you're trying to partner with. And of course, trusting the company that you're working with. Another big pivotal moment in my career was, after we were acquired by IBM as Tea Leaf, right? I built up a partner program. I built up a program for enabling partners, enabling partner sellers to be able to sell our products, enabling partners to be able to deliver professional services the way our professional services team did at Tea Leaf. But to be able to really do that at scale, we didn't really have the resources to roll out these programs. So when we got acquired by IBM, it was like all systems go, launch these enablement programs, target partners that are complementary to what Tea Leaf provides, and can provide the market at scale. And so it was by figuring out who the right adjacent partners are based on them partnering around other complementary or adjacent products that IBM was already selling, and then enabling them at scale is what we did. Within a very short amount of time, we were able to launch these programs. And as a result, we were able to recruit over 100 partners that were certified to sell and deliver services around Tea Leaf, which led to massive growth for the company post-acquisition. So for me, that was a really gratifying thing to be able to roll this thing out, roll out a strategy that enables us to acquire new partners at scale within the IBM system. And as a result, help our sellers make a lot of money and the company, as a newly acquired company, be very successful. And I'd say the last one in more recent times, as part of working for AWS for about 4 years, I launched this product ambassador program when I was working with the database services line within AWS. And it was all about, similarly, how do you enable business partners at scale? We expect these business partners to influence our business, help us sell our products. But so often you bring in a business partner, they don't really know exactly what to say or how to describe the product or how to represent it effectively. So I thought to myself, well, what if we trained our business partners the same way we train our specialized sellers? And how about we do that in a rapid way that we could validate they're capable? That could also enable our sellers to know who do they trust to bring into accounts and who do they actually partner with. So I came up with this program, built it out, launched it within 3 months, was able to get it to market and get approvals from legal, get approvals from branding for this program. And as a result, was able to get 1,000 plus sellers across 100 plus partners in 60 plus countries to adopt this program, get certified, and the impact on sales is tremendous. And so the success of that program was then rolled out across multiple other product service lines within AWS. And so that was really a pretty awesome program that stands out for me.
That's, first of all, music to my ears. And I understand just how Herculean a task that must have been. I walked the enablement road more than once. And like you, I had big 5, big 6 roots as well, because I started out at your competitor, D&T. So we were, sometimes on opposite sides of those equations. But I do appreciate how hard that can be with respect to enabling that many people over that short of a time frame and to do it effectively. I mean, you're pushing boundaries there, and that is an innovative approach. People don't necessarily think of the partner group as leading that effort, but as a result, I mean, it's just illustrative of just how, to what degree sales doesn't realize what they've got potentially with their pre-sales teams, right? Apart from the pre-sales teams, their partner teams. So with respect to that, I mean, you clearly found a niche, you executed that plan. What are some of the things that other organizations might want to start looking at with respect to really making the most out of the partnership between sales and the partner group?
I think when it comes to, and I think what you're getting to is sort of fostering a mindset of experimentation in sales. Is that fair to say?
That's absolutely fair.
Yeah, I think with all the big ideas or times when I've really felt like I've made an impact, it often comes down to listening and working backwards from your customers, from your fellow sellers, the sellers in the company, your business partners. understanding what's going to make an impact for them
Mm.
and coming up with some hypotheses, right? Like, if we were to do X, Y, and Z, would it move the needle in a big way? Gather that data, pilot, a play or two, and then just iterate. And that's what I've seen in terms of what's worked for me in terms of making a big impact or innovating and experimenting effectively. I would say also then for sellers who maybe aren't working closely with business partners today is that they try to align with one business partner, right? A really well-aligned business partner, a trusted seller, and try it out, right? Experiment and see where it goes from there. And once they see success, just continue to repeat it with a similar approach.
I know that solid makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, I've had some exposure to working on the partner team way back in the day at Introspect, actually, Kevin. I worked on both OEM, kind of system integrators and things like that. What can you talk about the different aspects of partnerships and which one do you focus on? Because there's resellers, there's system integrators, there's technological, partners, there's OEM. Is there any particular area that you focus on that you can talk about?
Yeah, in my experience, I've worked with pretty much all of them, right? So depending on whether you're a services company or you're a startup or a hyperscaler for that matter, or if you're a small or a medium business, an established company, or again, a startup, it totally varies. And for technology companies, what they're looking for is going to be different than a services company, right? Back in the day, when I referred to my experience at KPMG, we were the services arm for these large software companies, Siebel Systems and
Mhm.
many others. And so what they wanted was a trusted advisor, a third party that could go in, encourage a customer to make a decision, the right decision, and then ultimately they needed a partner that could implement their software. And that's what customers needed is A, someone they could trust to help them make a decision, and B, someone who could actually help them implement the product. For the software company or the hardware company, in case of Cisco systems, they need partners that can advise customers and could implement their products and solutions. So it really just depends on where you are, on which side of the coin here, and what motion will help you grow your business, accelerate your business through partnership.
With respect to that now, I mean, obviously you've worn a lot of different hats. What is your team presently doing and how are they driving success over at IBM today?
Yeah, it's interesting. You see businesses that are driving success with partnerships, many healthy partner programs are driving in excess of 25% of the business's revenue.
Right. Yeah.
Average in the software space or in the tech space is 50+%. And some companies are doing 80+. When you think about Demandware, a company I was working for, almost all their business was going through a business partner, touching a business partner. The services arm of the company was very light, and they really built their business around business partners. Cisco Systems, massive channel where 80+% of their business is going through a business partner in some way, shape, or form. So some companies really make this a core part of their business, and others are sort of experimenting, but more and more businesses are getting into partnerships and are making that a focal part of their business. And in my role at IBM, and IBM does a massive amount of business through business partners. Really, there's only, if you think about it, there's only about 500 to 600 direct accounts that IBM really focuses on. The rest of the accounts, some 80,000 or so, are intended to go through business partners, what we call our select accounts. So IBM really relies heavily on business partners. And historically, folks have looked at partners as an indirect channel. But the reality is actually that they can be your most direct channel possible. And why do I say that? If you think about it, 84% of B2B purchasing decisions start with a referral, right? And most purchases in business to business come through some sort of recommendation. And so your business partners, they have these trusted relationships, right? They've already done the hard work. They are trusted by the end customer. So if you could work with a business partner that has those established relationships, you're
Mm.
getting warm introductions, you're getting recommendations. So I think it's very important for companies and sellers to understand that dynamic.
Yeah, just something that you mentioned. So you were at Tea Leaf with the IBM acquisition, and you were at Demandware when Salesforce acquired them, right?
Interestingly enough, I had left Demandware before the acquisition. I did believe that was a potential acquisition play. Sort of interesting note. I took all my stock from IBM and rolled it into Demandware. And when they got bought by Salesforce, that was an event that I was glad I actually did and had the foresight to do back then. Interesting enough, though, if you look, I mean, at that time, IBM stock didn't really move a whole lot, but in the last 2 years, it's gone up over 80%. I'd like to think I have something to do with that, but obviously there's a lot of other things that are
Take a
going right
bow. You've got the floor. Go,
for IBM in the past
right
couple
on
of
you.
years. Yeah.
I was going to say you could be kind of the acquisition whisperer. We just follow you around to see what's going to be acquired next. So that's probably not going to be IBM, I'll say. I wanted to circle back though. Just I've worked with partner teams before, and I think the biggest hurdle I've always seen was just getting momentum going in that partnership. Because usually it's like, okay, we'll review accounts. This sounds great. There's a deck. And then nothing happens unless someone brings an opportunity in and it actually closes. Then people get excited again. You know how salespeople are, right? It's like, but from your experience, what really gets a successful program going? What are some of the motions or activities or things that really make a partnership work?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think most salespeople are still concerned that partnerships, will slow them down, right? And I think this is based on a lack of experience, maybe with partners, or a good partner, or a bad experience they had, or lack of past success. And there's a little secret that the best salespeople leverage partners as an integral part of their sales strategy. You think back to our days with Sam and Gary and those guys. It's not like partners were all in all their deals, but it was a key component to the way that they sold and how they did business. Um, you know, Interesting stats: partner sourced opportunities have an average of 30% higher win rates, 34 roughly percent um, higher contract value, 60% lower acquisition costs, 2 to 3 times shorter sales cycles. And then the retention rates are also higher. So the benefits are very clear to partnerships, to both the businesses that have successful partner ecosystems and partner programs, but then also for the sellers that participate. But that being said, it's critical you understand, why are you partnering, right? Like, what is the objective back to the type of business you are? Are you an SI or services company, a startup, a hyperscaler, a SaaS company? Why are you building partnerships, or why are you managing these types of partners? And then the different types of partners, which vary based on the type of company you are. And then at what stage, are you a small software company like Tea Leaf and you have one person managing the program? Do you have other resources supporting that individual? I mentioned once we were bought, we were able to do a whole lot more because there were more resources focused on partnerships. But one thing I did like about Tea Leaf is at least there was a commitment, right? Like Ira had a commitment to build a partner ecosystem. Professional sales or professional services was dedicated to building a program around partners. Marketing would support building collateral and building the messaging that could be taken to market with business partners. So the key is that partnerships have a seat at the table. It's an initiative that the company's bought into, and that you have the right resources invested in ensuring that it's a successful program. And that, not all partnerships are the same. Some partners and partnerships will work out really well. Some people at partners will be really well and effective to work at, and others won't be, right? So I think you just have to have an open mind, invest in the right partnerships, invest in the right relationships, and you'll inevitably see some of the results that successful partnerships and people who engage in partnerships are able to derive.
Well, that's a key point to bring up, right? Because right now in our industry, and there always seems to be going every few years, there's like a cycle to this. Pardon me. There's disruptions that are happening inside the marketplace right now. What do you feel from your perspective on the partner side of the house? What do you feel are the biggest disruptions that are happening right now, and what can partners bring to the table to help address and maybe mitigate some of those disruptions?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Obviously we're all seeing the impacts of AI. generative AI in particular. Automation is very big. Arvin, our CEO, talks very openly about how we're using AI at IBM, how we're using automation. We have had to let some people go as we're looking to automate portions of our HR and various processes and become more efficient as a company. There's a lot of efficiencies that are being created, and I think we're finding it in use cases across all roles, across all industries. We're seeing it in sales. And I think the most simple thing we're seeing, I think all of us is automated note takers, right? And the efficiencies that those are bringing. I know there's a lot of AI automations occurring within Salesforce in helping sellers prepare for calls or manage opportunities. And so, it's obvious that AI and automation are impacting all of us in the tech industry. We're feeling it. Those are two big areas in terms of solution capabilities and software solutions and platforms that IBM is focused on, which I think have contributed to our stock valuation over the past couple of years and our investments and acquisitions we've been making there. I touched on some of the others, cloud, hyperscalers. If you think about it, these guys, they've been growing so fast, and I think you could see the valuations of the hyperscalers and how their growth has worked out for them. But interestingly enough, these hyperscalers, as more companies are moving workloads to these clouds, 52% of enterprises have workloads that are in a public cloud. 7% are planning to move more workloads in the next 12 months. So although that sounds maybe like a large number, 52%, there's still a large number that is not addressed yet. So that's still an opportunity for these hyperscalers. But it also plays directly into IBM's strategy focused on a hybrid cloud strategy. There are just some workloads that aren't going to move, right? And so IBM's positioned itself right sort of in the middle. I like to use the reference as Switzerland, in that they are helping customers wherever they plan to run their workloads. Do you plan to keep some of those workloads on-prem? We got solutions for that. Are you planning on running some of them in Azure, some in GCP, and some on AWS? We'll support you there, right? So you hear the reference to meeting customers where they are at a lot at IBM, and that's sort of how we're positioning ourselves to be a hybrid cloud leader, if not the hybrid cloud leader, and an AI leader. And you see that in the partnership with AWS. The reason why I'm here in 2022, a strategic partnership was formed with AWS around that concept. IBM is seeing customers of theirs historically that they thought they can keep maybe on their public cloud or private cloud, now moving to AWS. IBM realized if we're not there, they may leave us. So we need to make our software available on AWS. And now IBM's got over 100 software listings that customers can procure and provision easily to some extent on AWS. That's another key disruptor that I wanted to raise are marketplaces and the marketplaces that are offered by AWS and Azure and others. It's quite remarkable. We all use Amazon.com, right? For ease of purchases and all that convenience, for simplicity and all that. But many businesses today are going to AWS Marketplace, for example, to simplify how they manage their billing, to simplify their procurement processes. And in some cases, they can actually draw down a committed spend that they have with AWS and use that to purchase third-party software like IBM's or others from these hyperscaler marketplaces. So, and from a trend perspective, you'll be amazed to hear that there are many large software companies that are now transacting over $1 billion in these marketplaces. And on the AWS marketplace, to name a few, CrowdStrike and Snowflake and Splunk and even Salesforce have now exceeded $1 billion in transactions on these marketplaces. So those are a couple key trends that I'm seeing. Obviously, AI and automation, but then these marketplaces and a move to the cloud, and just sort of elaborating on where IBM is positioning itself in the hybrid cloud. But I think more and more partnerships will continue to be relevant as more becomes automated, as more purchases are occurring through these marketplaces, through a product-led growth type of approach to purchasing. More products are going to be embedded in others to scale, and more relationships will be needed across business partnerships to help make these transitions as simplified and seamless for end customers. And interestingly enough, you look at Salesforce. When Salesforce came out, companies like Accenture didn't know whether or not there was still going to be a need for a lot of services, right? Because you weren't implementing software solutions the way you did before, perpetual license software solutions. But these businesses like Accenture have been thriving with SaaS software because there's so much room for for customization, building APIs, et cetera. And so I think there'll continue to be a need, if not a greater need, for business partners as we move forward.
Yeah, I want to drill down on one point that you made, which I think is worth just mentioning further, because I've had this a couple times in my last couple software companies I've been with, is the ability for you to sell your software and for your customer to take down obligated credits on these platforms is really key. I mean, that was critical to us because it gave extra incentive for them to do this deal because they have to pay this stuff. They're obligated to pay this stuff to these platforms. And a lot of times they're scrambling at the last minute to figure out how do we do that so that we're not just paying for unused credits, right? So can you just talk a little bit more about that? I think it's important for our listeners.
Yeah. So for AWS, they call it an EDP, Enterprise Discount Program. And so, customers in many cases, business partners have these in place. Obviously, they're committing a certain amount of spend based on what they believe they're going to consume of AWS, in this case, and AWS's services, which are what they call their products. But often they don't meet those particular goals, right? And so it's a win-win for the company that's made this commitment and also for AWS to give the option for them to spend that on a software solution that's running on their infrastructure, right? AWS is going to benefit either way. And so, as a seller, when you're looking for a budget, these EDPs are not a bad place to look, right? And if it's the customer's preference to transact in this manner, then not only will you find budget, but you'll find a much simpler way to procure the products. Now, you still have to do your selling. I think some sellers think they've got this notion that, oh, it's there and there's this money and they're just going to buy our software. Well, stand in line. They could buy other software too.
It's interesting you would mention that because creative ways of being able to go and buy and take advantage of those types of credits that you might have and those unusual types of products or probably programs that maybe people don't necessarily understand. They've been important in the past. And I think as we're going forward today with, you had mentioned, the whole AI explosion, we've had some folks coming on from the AI world before, and I can see how understanding and even discovering that they even have those opportunities are things that people are going to be struggling with. And that's where the seller really comes to the table with being able to go and communicate those to the folks that they're trying to sell to, or else otherwise, how would they even know they had that opportunity to take advantage of such a program, right?
That's right. Well, and it takes education, right? I think we're all going through this period of, retraining you know, uh, and that I think I look back on my career and some of the things that have helped me be successful, it's always having that, as Salesforce refers to it, as the beginner's mind, right? As AWS refers to it as in one of their leadership principles is always be curious, right? And continuously learning, right? Just always trying to learn something new. And this is an example of that. And so, we do a lot of training at IBM for our sellers and obviously, for sellers at AWS as well around this partnership, helping them understand that this relationship is more complementary than it is competitive. That there's the benefit to AWS that our software is running on their infrastructure. So that benefits them. And for IBM sellers, a customer may prefer to run the software and purchase it through AWS. And so you can't be ignorant to that reality. You need to understand what that is and have that be a part of your sales strategy and sales processes, and at least present that option to a customer and find out if that is their preference. And so some sellers shy away from understanding that, but in this equation, all sellers are made whole. So an AWS seller makes money the same way they would otherwise. An IBM seller makes money when they sell it on AWS. And then the customer is able to draw down that EDP. So it really is a win-win across the board. And it takes just a little bit of education to understand some of the nuances.
You talked about kind of your success as being in the partner role and what makes for successful partnerships. A lot of it being just the ability to collaborate effectively across all the teams. That was always a challenge just at IBM for me. It's like doing that stuff. But imagine bringing all the partner teams, the sellers, et cetera. And in fact, I think you said you built a software company around that, right? As well. So I just wonder if you just take a few minutes and talk about how to develop that successfully. What makes for successful collaboration? What were some of the tools or techniques that you used that allowed that to happen?
Yeah. So, I think in terms of, and I touched on this earlier, just what makes a successful partner program, it is ensuring that whoever's running partnerships has an equal seat at the table.
Mm.
It's acknowledging the value that partnerships can bring and the required investment. It's not just some sort of preconceived expectation. I think for a small software company or smaller businesses, they may say, okay, bring in partnerships and we're going to exponentially increase our sales overnight or in a few months, right? Hey, guy, go build this thing, go make the magic happen, right? Like it's just like pixie dust.
Right.
But the reality is partnerships are complicated, right? To achieve the results that you want out of partnerships, you need committed resources across the product team, across the services team, across marketing and sales. I touched on this a little bit earlier as well. And, at Tea Leaf, although we weren't a big company, we did have the right commitment from the right group. So, and then, once we were acquired, we could basically throw some gasoline on all those initiatives and scale up. So as your company does get bigger, you could start to hire more resources and scale the partner program. But, I think it's important to recognize that partner managers have loads of responsibilities across so many different roles, from contracting to onboarding new partners, to enabling the partners, to training and certifying, to managing those partner relationships, building joint solutions, to co-selling, to demand gen, to co-marketing, to tracking and reporting. The list goes on. So, obviously, as much as you could sort of automate a lot of these motions, there are some tools that can help you do this. As long as you can, in small software company cases, dedicate some resources to support the partner team,
Mm.
and eventually scale up and dedicate the right committed resources to these initiatives, the likeliness that you're going to increase your success. And that is, of course, based on building the right partnerships for the right objectives to begin with. And then there are some good tools. Obviously, there's Salesforce. There's a bunch of partner management tools out there on the marketplace that could be used. And the product that I launched, RGlobe, I was way ahead of our time.
Mm.
And I was able to land Oracle as my first enterprise customer. They rolled it out to a good number of their 26,000 partners at the time. So that was a major achievement that we had back in the day. But interestingly enough, the same concept, the same objectives of RGlobe today exist in a company called Crossbeam and a company called Workspan. And these companies are thriving and managing billions of dollars in transactions and opportunities and deals through their platform across the hyperscalers and all the software companies. They're becoming the standard. So I have some level of comfort knowing that I was onto something back in the day. But nonetheless, I learned a ton, and I'm able to take that expertise into everything I do every day on the job here.
I think the value to any organization, small, medium size, enterprise size, the critical value that partners can be bringing to the table in terms of a full force multiplier is pretty clear. What are some, you've gone through this exercise yourself multiple times now. What are some of the things that organizations typically do wrong when they're looking to go and focus on bringing out a partner program? What's kind of like, I see it all the time, this is where they tend to fail.
Yeah, I think it is the sort of, it's the understanding that you have to commit the right resources, right? And it's not hiring 10 people when you're just starting a partner organization. It's ensuring that everyone in the organization understands what is the plan, why are we building this partner program, who are the partners that we're going after, What are we expecting, and having specific goals and metrics around the program and the partnerships that you're forming, integrating the partner leadership into the fabric of the company, right? Whether that is general company planning, specific targets and goals for the company, integrating them into the sales kickoffs, into QBRs. The key is that you think about, what are we trying to achieve with the partner program? Is it increased sales? Is it enhancing our go to market with our product? Is it embedding some capability that we just are never going to build, or it's going to take us many years to build? So we want to partner with another technology company to fill that gap. Is it, building a services business for a service company, and, them determining which of the three hyperscalers or which of the large enterprise software companies they want to build their relationship around. So I think it is starting with the right plan, setting the right metrics, making the right investments, and really making partnerships a key integral part of your business.
Excellent. It sounds like a fascinating part of the business for people to be getting into, and it maybe doesn't necessarily carry the panache something like sales would, but it's clearly critical to the overall success of a software organization. Some of the folks that are listening to our session today, they're going, I wonder if that's for me. If somebody was kicking that idea around, thinking maybe I should be exploring partners, what advice would you give them as they were considering maybe getting into the partner space?
For me, I've seen partner programs, and what compelled me back in the early days of the Cisco strategic partnerships I was involved in the early 2000s. It was seeing the massive impact and exponential sales impact that the partnership had, that
Mm.
it intrigued me and caught my attention. And, uh, you know, it's been an opportunity to essentially run a part of the business, right? I mentioned all those different roles that a partner manager has. It's an opportunity for not only impact, if executed effectively at a large scale, but it's getting your hands into a variety of different aspects of running a business, and being able to work closely with the product team, being able to work closely with the professional services and the sales team and the sales engineers. And so it's also interesting the types of people involved and getting involved in partner roles. I kind of think of it like, two sports that I sort of built throughout my career: MMA and mixed martial arts, and kiteboarding. And those may be two interesting references in terms of where you're going with this. But if you think about those two sports, you got people from all different sports coming into them, right? Mixed martial arts, you got boxers, you got folks with a variety of different martial arts skills, whether they're coming from Brazil or Japan or wherever. Judo versus other types of martial arts. They're coming together, they're providing something new and exciting to make the sport interesting and exciting for others. And kiteboarding, same thing. You get people from wakeboarding and water skiing and snowboarding, all coming into this sport. So similarly in partnerships, there's no single path to partnerships. We've got people, you think about Ruba, who runs the partner ecosystem for AWS. She came from Boston Consulting. So you're seeing a lot of people coming from these management consulting firms who are coming in and leading these partner organizations. Or you see people from sales backgrounds bringing that perspective and that experience, or engineers just coming in and just trying to do something different that has an impact on the business. So I think it's a unique space that, for someone who wants to make a big impact and sees that their skills can be very relevant and impactful, it's definitely a space to consider and explore.
So definitely somebody who's entrepreneurial in spirit and competitive by nature is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I think that's a good summary.
And I would say those definitely sum up your characteristics, not all of your qualities, because that's a long list, but definitely two characteristics that we would certainly ascribe to you, my friend. I would love for us to keep going on. I'm learning, as I always do when I'm sitting down talking with you. I'm learning about aspects of the industry that I don't normally get exposure to, and enjoying it tremendously. But we do need to bring our episode to a close. So with that being said, if there is somebody out there who's thinking, I think I might want to cut my teeth on this, what would be a good way for them to maybe get in touch with you to maybe bounce some ideas or maybe learn a little bit more about the space?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is just LinkedIn, reach out to me, make a request, shoot me a message. I'm very passionate about this space and would be very, very happy to have a discussion with anyone interested in more information.
And your passion definitely is reflected in the impact and successes you've had in that space. And I wish you even more as the years go on. So thank you very much for coming on board here today and sharing with us.
My pleasure. Great to see you guys again.
Great to see you too, sir. And folks, when you get a chance, please, if you haven't already done so, take a moment, like, follow, subscribe, comment on the show, share with us some ideas about topics and subjects you want us to explore that we haven't done already. Come on next week and join us right here where we'll have another guest sharing ideas, thoughts, best practices, and insights from the world of enterprise software sales. If you would like, you can go to our website and buy a copy of our book, Winning Faster, the Move Framework for Enterprise Software Sales Success. And you can learn about the methodology you hear Matt and I are referring to. But for now, that is the end of our show. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. Matt, thank you very much for coming on to the show again today. It's always wonderful to see you.
As you?
And Tamer, thank you again for coming on. It has been much too long since we've sat down and had a conversation about the business. I can't wait for us to have another one again.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, folks, we will see you here next week on the same podcast. Take care.